Hello everyone, no more Kombat video. Doing a lot of more Kombat stuff again lately, I guess. Of course the MK12 reveal kind of sparks that. Um, and I guess to kind of pair with my ideal roster, that list I made in my previous video about what would be the ideal roster for MK12, is led me to go back to old rosters and make changes that I think would make them more suitable rosters, specifically looking at the story, because as I mentioned before, I think the character roster should always be determined by story. Of course, fan favorites, you can work into the story more often than not. That totally makes sense. That's totally fine. But at the end of the day, you need characters there for story reasons. Otherwise, there's no point. There's no point other than, of course, just appeasing the fans of that character. So yeah, this video will be coming to 3 years as a whole, and I'm thinking of calling this video like a fixing rosters, but I don't think I'll be titling this video specifically that, simply because the 3DR rosters are really damn good. They are a exceptional blend of newcomers and returning characters. They do a really phenomenal job, especially between Deadly Alliance and Deception, how they handle that. And the fact that it led to Armageddon, the Everyone Is Here game of MK. Because, quite frankly, you look at the Deception roster and Deadly Alliance roster, there are only 6 characters carried over from Deadly Alliance to Deception, and they all still play differently. It's not a copy-paste situation. Of course, Unchained brings some more back, and when I'll be looking at the Deception roster, I'll be looking at Unchained, just because you get the full roster. We might as well look at the version exclusives, the GameCube and the PSP exclusives, simply because there are ones I change personally. But yeah, this is mostly just improving the roster, in my opinion at least, because I think these are really great rosters. So we'll be starting Day Alliance. And the reason we're starting here and not at the arcade era of games is because MK1, the start, you can't really improve that other than saying make Shang Tsung and Goro playable. Mortal Kombat 2, I think the characters they chose to remove were the right decision, because they literally based off of who's the 2 characters who were played the least, Kano and Sonya, which makes sense. And MK3, definitely has some. It's well, just as a whole, it's a bizarre roster, but I respect it for that. A roster without Scorpion, that's just kind of cool, honestly. And also, there's no point trying to fix that, because we already got that with UMK3 and Trilogy, which added more characters as well as bringing all the past characters back. Trilogy being another Everyone Is Here game, much like Armageddon. Of course, Armageddon being a much grander roster due to all the additional newcomers that come from MK4 and video games. And I'm not covering MK4 just because, at least once you get to Gold, I don't really have any complaints. I think there's alternatives to make, but there's something that I'd say I'd improve. I think it's quite a solid roster for the story it's trying to tell. Whereas when you get to the 3D, you've got more specific stories to tell, and also, of course, there's more characters. So that's why we're starting here. Not because these are bad rosters or anything like that, because these are my favourite rosters. I think the 3D has the best rosters. The best everything, pretty much, in my opinion. So yes, with that clarified, let's get into the changes. And also, when we get to the NRS games, whenever I make those videos, it'll be an entire video dedicated to each one, because there's a lot of changes to make, honestly, for those. Whereas with Deadly Alliance and Deception, there's more specific ones, which is why, again, covering it in just one video. So yeah, the Deadly Alliance roster, where you have 21 characters here, but there's also 23 mocap and Blaze in mind. That's not relevant to this video, because I might have suggestions for what should have been there instead of newcomers, but overall I won't replace newcomers, because I always think newcomers are, in the grand scheme of things, more valuable than a character returning. Because in the moment, you might be like, okay, why they add his character when there's so many characters are waiting to see return? I don't think that was a problem back then. It is now, certainly. I mean, there's so many characters, and a good chunk haven't returned since 2006. But right now, it's not a huge concern, especially when you consider 2 years later, you got a pretty much entirely different roster, and then 4 years later, you got Armageddon, 2 years after Deception. So, yeah, you can't really complain. Um, so yeah, I think the newcomers are very valuable, even if they're not like essential to the story. Like, I don't think that's a problem. You know, I think they all offer something, especially the 3D era newcomers. I think they're incredibly underrated. And if I were to pull like a cast of characters in a certain era, I definitely go with the 3D trilogy. You know, the Daylights, Deception, and also the Sons of Argus. Just a very incredible group of characters that we don't get to see much of because people with bad taste. So yeah, myself, you've got the Deadly Alliance. You need them. They're the main villains. Cool as fuck. But Raicho is a great debut in character. I think it's worth discussing him because my main change for this is adding Fujin and Kai to the roster. And it's curious because, of course, my reasoning is their connection to Liu Kang, who is now dead. Of course, we have a lot of characters who are quite connected to Liu Kang. Of course, we've just got the heroes in general, like Johnny Cage and Sonya. But more specifically, we've got Kung Lao, of course, and Raiden relinquishing his status as an Elder God, and then Boraicho. And it's interesting with Boraicho because, of course, he debuts in this game, so we didn't know about the connection until this game. But they handled it really well, and especially in following games like Deception, where they further established the importance of Boraicho, when he teaches Shijinko, and then that's in the Conquest, that is, he teaches Shijinko, and then in the present day events, he's teaching Li Mei. So very cool character, definitely a great addition to the lore and the franchise. So I think he's definitely an essential newcomer here. But yeah, it's definitely a strange thought how instead of bringing back something like Liu Kang's protege, they decide to establish Liu Kang's master. I just think it's interesting. But yeah, I would not replace Boraicho for Kai or Fujin. Now, Fujin, I think, is essential for the roster. Not even just because of, like, Liu Kang's dead or whatever. More specifically because he's Earthrealm's protector god. And that lore doesn't change. Like, that was canon. Like, it was in both Fujin and Raiden's endings, you know? And, yeah, it was clear canon, and even, you know, it carries over to Armageddon. He's the protector god of Earthrealm. He doesn't become that because of Dark Raiden. He was just the protector god during the entire 3D era. He never stopped being the protector god. When Raiden relinquishes his status as an elder god, he's just a god back on Earth. He is not the protector god. He doesn't have the protector status. He's just there because the Day Alliance fucked with Liu Kang, which I think is a very cool distinction to make. He's not back to just take back his old job. He's just here to fuck up the main villains, and I think that's cool. But obviously, that raises the question of where the hell is the protector god then? And I mean, this is the point I made in my MK12 wish list. Well, not wish list, but ideal roster. And that was that Fujin is like really essential to most stories. Because if he's not around, then it will always raise the question of where is Fujin. He's not a character you can just have absent and then have him return without an explanation. Like, he needs to be doing something because he is a god. Especially in these Midway games, because he becomes the protector god. And I don't think the solution is as simple as replacing Raiden with him, because Raiden as a series mainstay, I think is honestly totally fine. I usually don't like that, but I don't have an issue with it. Even though this game is like trying to do a massive shake-up, which they succeeded at doing with Liu Kang's death, and as well as Shao Kahn's, of course. But Raiden's return here, it still makes sense in relation to his status. That's totally in character, And also, it's just a really great appearance for Raiden. Like, it's probably his most iconic appearance, like his design, like the visual aesthetics of the character, but also just the story role. And the Deception intro, how that ties into the creation of Dark Raiden when Onaga shows up, and all that stuff. So Raiden definitely has a place in this roster. And like I said, he doesn't come back to just take Fujin's role. He just relinquishes his status to allow him to come to Earth once more. So that means Fujin and Raiden can absolutely coexist on the roster again. So we look at other characters now. And we have Scorpion is definitely one, which, particularly in these games, it's hard to justify his appearance. In this game, he's just out for revenge on Quan Chi, and he keeps getting stopped. Even by Quan Chi himself, like he kicks him into the acid bath before making that handshake you see in the intro with Shang Tsung. Quan Chi actually showed up during that, and Quan Chi just kicks him into the acid bath. But the cool thing with Scorpion in this game is, even though I don't like the direction of just him being some mindless, angry man just out for revenge, this game does it like really cool. Like this is the only time where I felt like Scorpion going out for revenge has actually been badass and not just try hard, like in the movie Scorpion's Revenge, because he just doesn't give up. He is relentless, but it's not like he can stop this really powerful sorcerer, especially when he's got all this help. He gets the Oni, Murloc and Draman, and they kick his ass numerous times in various conquests. And even in his canonical ending, Murloc and Draman defeat him and hurl him into the Solnado, which I think is very cool for Draman and Murloc. Murloc definitely, obviously, isn't on this roster. He's an NPC boss, and I think that's totally fine. I think he's the best handled NPC boss. Not just like the boss fight, although I think it's pretty solid, all things considered. But because like Draman's here and he's just Draman's buddy, when you go to like Draman's Conquest, his bios, Murloc is there with him. So it doesn't feel like Murloc was missing out on anything in terms of being an NPC, other than the fact you can't play him. Like, it doesn't feel like he missed out on story opportunities, buy opportunities, because he's around with Draman. So massive props for that. And the fact that it does put over Murloc and Draman as major threats, especially as a duo, beating Scorpion. Although Scorpion, he's not actually that strong. That's a massive misconception just because he's become the poster child in the modern era. And of course, he's just generally a really popular character. Really popular, really famous. It doesn't mean it's not strong, but still, it's still quite a good merit for the character to achieve. And also, just because Quan Chi is the main villain in this, I think Scorpion is fine, but I think he's definitely up. He's getting close to the chopping block here. But I think his role is fine in this roster. Again, he's just on his own, and he doesn't achieve his goals for anything, which he shouldn't. You know, Quan Chi's way out of his league, especially at this point in the timeline. But he's got a cool story role, even if it is ultimately meaningless. The characters I'm looking at, again, we're trying to find suitable candidates to be replaced by Kai and Fujin. And I think Johnny Cage is easily one of them. The guy who's never a mainstay because he won an MK2. And also he was in the previous game, MK4 and MK Gold. So he could absolutely be one of those characters who would take a break. But also his story role. Now, if they just made a story better, because of course, he's been with Liu Kang since the first game, you know, there's certainly a connection with the two, and I think there is actually a really good interaction that Raiden and Johnny have in Raiden's Conquest, where he is genuinely upset when he's shooting a movie, Raiden shows up and tells him the news. Raiden's Conquest story and Daylight's Conquest is so underrated for text boxes and just the story stuff. It's why it's the best story in the franchise, because they have the best storytelling method, quite frankly. In terms of representing all the characters on the roster, like, Dead Answers are better than any other game. In terms of like an individual story, like Deception and Armageddon's Conquest is better, but it focuses on specific characters, of course. That is the downside to that. But I digress. I thought that was a good moment, but it's not enough to justify him being here. Especially when his role kind of just goes back to being like Hollywood guy. Like, he feels like a joke character in this game, which is a massive shame given like the whole situation. And considering like you had stuff like MK3 where he's willing to put his life on the line for like Earthrealm and whatnot. So like he's not gonna be some fucking clown at this point in the timeline. But his bars are just about how he wants to cash in, make a fucking movie about this, and that's why he's doing this. Not because he wants to avenge his fallen friend. Like, that already makes his appearance in this game quite shit. And his conquest is just full of terrible jokes. But yeah, it's just compared to the other heroes, he's definitely less significant. That even if you were to handle him better in this game in terms of the characterization of Johnny, there's still less of a need for him compared to something like Kai, who wants to avenge Liu Kang. That definitely has more emotional impact than Johnny, because Kai is his protege. They're closer than Johnny and Liu Kang. So yeah, and it's actually quite funny because I genuinely think the biggest contribution Johnny makes is giving us mocap and his connection to mocap. Because of course mocap does the motion capture for his movies and stuff, and they're friends. And I think that's like quite fun lore for a fun character. Mocap, we won't be replacing. Again, obviously he's not an essential character, but he's a secret character. That's just cheating if I were to replace him. Also, I don't want to erase Mocap's existence. I don't care how silly it is. It is such a fun character, and it's a good homage to Carlos Messina, and all the motion capture work he's done for the franchise. So I actually want him to be around. And it's actually funny because keeping his presence, that further justifies getting rid of Johnny, because Johnny can be an NPC, show up in his endings, and basically that can explain Johnny's absence. He's off shooting a movie, and then you get the news later. It doesn't even need to be Deception, because there's not big time gaps between these games. Armageddon, he just show up, That's when he finishes his movie, and then he learns all this shit that has happened, and then he's like, okay, I've got to make up for my absence. And that's how he starts Forces for Light, which he does in Armageddon. Armageddon, he has a very good bio, actually. So that definitely made up for this game, but yeah, I don't think Johnny should be here. He's immediately getting ruled out. And we'll put Kai in his place. Now, Fujin, because I said I wouldn't replace Raiden, this leads me to Kano. And if you know me, you know I think Kano's the worst character in the franchise, honestly. And I don't like him in this game either. He's weird. But his presence is more justified than Johnny. One, because he wasn't around in MK4, of course. But also because his conquests and his bias, they explain the absences of other characters. Shiva and Motaro and their weird subplot involving Kano. It's a really bad subplot about how Shiva was going to betray Khan or whatever, and wanted Kano's help, and Kano snitches, which makes sense for Kano. But yeah, that whole stuff, like, is established in this game, at least as canon. And it's not good information, but it is informative. It is important information. This is probably Kano's most important role in the franchise. And even then, it's not because of him himself. It's because he's associated with other characters. Like the Red Dragon debuts in this game. So it's important to have a Black Dragon character. Especially with like Mavado's ending. He goes to capture Kano. That is a huge merit, and it's canon because in Armageddon, Kano is imprisoned in Charred Mountain on the Red Dragon base. So that's all positive so far. But the negatives come in the fact that we have gone so many games where the Black Dragon has been supposed dead already at this point, right? And we're just kind of like, Kano's back now, even though the whole thing was Jark's last Black Dragon, and Kano's just here again now. Like, it's not great already, but like, you can buy it. He's a criminal, he's gone to hiding, obviously, and he's really much hid Hard Day Alliance. But his role of being just a goon, again, it's not important. That could be an NPC role, but at the same time, you don't actually need Kano around. I think it does help Red Dragon. It helps Movado specifically because he's capturing a member. But again, that could just be backstory information, like how Movado, like something he's done in the past is, and it explains Cabal's absence in recent games, is that Movado just hunted him down. Doesn't care if you're a current Black Dragon member or you were one in the past. He doesn't care. He's going to take you out. And he takes out Cabal, kills him, at least presumably, and takes his hook swords as trophies. That is really cool. People are fucking crybabies about it because, Cabal, oh, I can't believe you do that to Cabal. Cabal shows up in the next game, it doesn't fucking matter. Yet people still hold a grudge against Movado. So Movado, absolutely incredible newcomer. And with the amount of wins he gets, and Kano being one of them, and it's quite an important win, even though Kano's not a credible threat, but it's important because Movado succeeds in all his missions, and it's something he's rewarded with, having the alliances. Yeah, go take out Kano. I think that's an interesting thing, having both the Black Dragon and the Red Dragon helping the Deadly Alliance. Kind of under the commands of different members of the Deadly Alliance as well. It's Quan Chi who gets the Red Dragon. I assume Shang Tsung got Kano. I don't even know if that was established. I don't even know if they clarified now. But it's Quan Chi specifically who's operating Red Dragon stuff, which is kind of neat and something I didn't realize before. Like Quan Chi's fortress, the whole spider web, like laser stuff. That comes from the Red Dragon. That's their tech, which again, just very cool attention to detail. Just a fun fact there. But yeah, it doesn't justify him. Even if I do think that helps a lot. I think there's more negatives to his appearance than positives. And again, it's stuff that you can kind of just establish it without him being an actual playable character. Like how in next game, Baraka and Tanya just established as being with the Day Alliance. There's not really a point to it with Tanya, but with Baraka it's actually very important because the Tarkhan hordes kill a good chunk of the heroes in this game, which is quite funny because they were established as being around in Deadly Alliance. So yeah, you can just establish it later, or just in this game, just say, "Hey, Kano's working for him." He's not playable, but yeah, that's what his role is. You have so many like conquest tech stuff that there's so much room in this game to just establish that stuff. That Kano can go through roster and you can put Fujin in there. I know that knocks us down a villain with another hero, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. I don't think, at least. And that's it. I think the rest of the roster is solid. I think Reptile's role is a bit puzzling, but it's important to Onaga's return, and also it's a decent subplot with Natara. Like the whole Natara, Reptile, and Cyrax stuff is pretty good. I like how Natara's caring for Reptile. But I think like Reptile's basically gone insane at this point, and for some reason he's loyal to Shao Kahn through this insanity, which doesn't make sense. He doesn't know that he merged the Terror into Outworld. But at the same time, that's dumb because that would be common sense. Like, who else would have done it, mate? So that was my biggest gripe with Reptile, but again, the other stuff absolutely justifies Reptile being in this game. Also, look at him, he's so cute. He's a cute little big lizard guy. I love his Day Alliance look. I know it's a hot take. Although it's not even it's not even like a very hot take. I think it's quite split down the middle. Like, some people like the human Reptile, some people like the full lizard, and some people are boring and like the in-between, which, sure, but just go full lizard. Your name's Reptile, please. I keep rambling, but that's the thing. It's important, I think, to just discuss characters, even if it's ones I'm not replacing, because there's definitely some other options, like I mentioned Scorpion earlier, of characters that you could probably replace with someone. But I am the only change I want to make for this roster is getting rid of Johnny and Kano and putting Fujin and Kai in their place. And that took a lot longer than I thought, honestly. This probably could have been separate videos, but I introduced this video as being two, so here we are. We're looking at Unchained now for our second section of this video. Of course, this includes the Deception roster, as well as Goro, Shao Kahn, Blaze, Jax, Satan, and Frost. Now, this is a larger roster. It's actually 30 characters, which I think this is, particularly the Unchained version, it's more debatable with base Deception, but Unchained roster is definitely the best MK roster outside of Armageddon. Armageddon, by default, is the best MK roster, of course. But besides that, it's this, which released the same year. So, yeah, this one I have more changes, actually, or more suggestions, because it's weird, actually, because Deadly Alliance, whilst it has less changes I want to make, it's got more important characters I want to choose. Whereas with this game, the absences are less questionable, but at the same time, there feels like there's more that should be around. I'm going to start right away with Cyrax. Cyrax from Deadly Alliance. He is the one character who has none of his stuff reused. None of it's given to other characters, and his 5 stars are brought back for Deception. And his weapon style does not play the same as any of the weapon styles in this game. All his stuff is original except for the spin kick. That goes to Darius, but we've seen with stuff like Tanya and Noob, they can share specials. That's totally fine. I know Cyrax was considered low tier, but you could just buff him. You could just change his properties. Like Deception, you have like the Xbox and PS2 release stuff. And the GameCube made adjustments to stuff to balance the game out more. And I think those changes apply to the PSP version as well. So yeah, it's totally doable. And of course, we saw with the this Unchained cast that they can just port the characters over. Like hypothetically, they could have just poured all the Deadly Alliance characters that were absent back. For the Unchained port, I get what I didn't do for the Deception port, because that, even though it's a big roster, that would look strange, because it'd be like, well, you just copy pasted half your roster. So I get why that's not the case. But the Unchained ones, Sark definitely should have been one of them. Like again, you could just make the case I should have just been in base Deception, but I don't have anyone to specifically replace her. As with Unchained, we could probably replace Jax with Cyrax. The thing is, with the 4 Unchained returning characters, they all have at least one thing that another character shares, I believe. Frost might not. No, I think she does. She does. Actually, no. I don't know. Katana might not either, but I know Jax does. I just said, oh, they all share something. I'm like, I'm not sure with 2 of these characters. Point being, Jax, shares the Tom first play the same as the Cobra Jutsu, for example. So yeah, like, and it's not as simple as that. I think from a story standpoint, Cyrax should have just been involved in Deception, because the thing is, well, a lot of heroes die in Deadly Alliance, and this is something I kind of only realize now. Cyrax in Natara's canonical ending, where Natara restores her realm, and that can justify her absence for this game, because her realm's back, she's busy doing that, and that's unassociated with the plot of the Dragon King and whatnot. Although if word got to her that Onaga's trying to merge her realms, then she would definitely help out, but it makes sense that she wouldn't know about that, so it makes sense why she's not in this game. But Cyrax, the reward for Cyrax for helping Natara was Natara just sent Cyrax back to Earthrealm, just helped him out with her necklace thing. So Cyrax was left unscathed, and he was brought to Earth from. He wasn't lost or anything. So there's no reason for his absence in Deception. He's not an essential story character, but yeah, there was no reason for it, and especially if we're looking at there's no real special forces rep, you could just have Cyrix here, and I think it makes more sense than Jax. And again, like Cyrix could slot in the base roster, although there's not really anyone I'd really replace him with. Again, you could just add him to the roster, realistically, because none of his parts are used. You could just pull him over. And then with Unchained, it's even more baffling because, again, chose characters that already have stuff reused in Deception. I don't know how they decided that. But yeah, it's puzzling. Cyrix's absence, and again, I don't really know where to specifically slot him outside of replacing Jax, I guess. So yeah, that is the one thing I do with the Unchained reps here. The others are absolutely valid. Frost, the issue with Frost is like her role kind of fucking sucks because they establish like her dementia stuff and she massacres Lin Kuei people. I don't like the direction for the character. I think they absolutely fumbled with the character because they had to have a betray Sub-Zero to write her out, only to bring her back in all the other games after. Not on base Deception, but still, 2006, she's in 2 games. And Villain Frost has been a thing ever since, even in MK11, and nothing's been done with that direction for the character. But even with that in mind, there's not really anything to replace her with, is the thing. And also, either way, that lore would just be in Armageddon anyway. I'm not rewriting the stories here, so Frost can stay. But the GameCube exclusives here, Shao Kahn, again, bad story role, but very, very marketable exclusive character, as well as Goro. But a specific change I'd make is replace Goro with Kintaro. Kintaro had not returned outside of the trilogy games. Goro had his big return in MK4. And Kintaro hadn't made a 3D yet. So absolutely the GameCube port could have brought back the MK2 bosses. That could have been what they advertised it as. You get to play as the MK2 bosses in 3D, Shao Kahn and Kintaro. Because Kintaro, big fucking name, sells well, just as well as Goro, I feel, even though Goro's more well known. Kintaro is just as marketable, absolutely. So that's not a concern. Also, just a story role, because the thing is, Goro, of course, aligns with the heroes and is a whole feast with the Shokan and the Centaurs. But we don't know what happens with Kintaro. Kintaro, you could just say he's still with Shao Kahn. In Trilogy, because Kintaro actually has a bio, because he's actually still around Trilogy, Goro's still presumed dead, so he's not actually involved in that game's events. Kintaro is like the supreme leader of his armies. Like he has some crazy title like that. So, he's probably in a high position, Shao Kahn has just groomed him to be in this high position, and because he's not around for MK4, we don't have a reason for him to leave his side. If you want a guy who's orchestrating like a group of Shokanites, it doesn't have to be the entire army of Shokan, but also just a general Khan Guard army. It doesn't have to be specifically the Shokan race. It can be just any Khan loyalist. You could have Kintaro rallying that. Perhaps you bring Reiko back into the fold as an NPC, have him appear in Kintaro's bio as being mentioned in them and maybe be in their endings. Like how you have that one shot in Goro's ending, where you have Shao Kahn and Goro and there's that whole army stood around him. You just have various Khan Guard guys, and then you have the big trio is Khan, Reiko, and Kintaro. That's what I think you do. I'm not going to suggest Reiko shows up in this roster. He doesn't need to. But yeah, you could throw him in there. You don't have to, but that was just a thought. Because he's, of course, known as the main Khan loyalist guy. And also, because I don't think Kintaro should just be a villain, of course, but it's much more justifiable than Goro. And also, it would then lead into Armageddon, where Armageddon, you can have Goro still the forces of light, and him and Kintaro, they're beefing it out, and their conflict can get resolved, or at least hypothetically it would. Of course, the timeline gets rebooted anyway, but the goal with that would have been, if we went down that path, would have been Goro convinces Kintaro to betray Shao Kahn and join the Edenian forces, because even in Deception, Kintaro is the one leading the attack on Edenia, the attack that conflicts with the timeline, but still, with Khan's death, you can just have Kintaro still doing that, just without him knowing. And that could just be Khan's go-to guy. There's no reason for Shao Kahn to make this whole plot to kill Goro when he has Kintaro in his pocket as his leader of his armies. Just go to Kintaro. You don't need to kill Goro. Kintaro might just be better than Goro as well. There's no definitive answer to which is the stronger Shokan, but Kintaro's in a higher position of power. Of course, Goro's a prince, but when it comes to your own army, Kintaro's the leader of that. So Kintaro would have more military influence. So yeah, Kintaro, I think 100% should have been in the game instead of Goro. And then Armageddon, establishes Goro stuff. It could have been that, Shao Kahn hired assassins to get Goro, so that Goro, because he would have known, that would have been something, because of course Shao Kahn's a smart planner. This would have been something he could have thought out. He could have expected Goro might try to change Kintaro's mind, or he might have already been trying to do that, and Shao Kahn becomes aware of this. Maybe Kintaro mentions to it in a conversation or something, and he's like, "Oh, did he now?" And since I wouldn't say I'm not trying to retcon the story, but there was never a reason for Noob to be working for Khan in this point in the timeline. Noob's off doing his own thing, trying to start his nanobot demon army with Smoke. But yeah, just general assassins, I mean, look at just a whole group of them, really, to take down Goro, of course. His extermination squad is what happened to them? Because they're a big deal, Motaro was established as the leader of the extermination squads, and that is a higher position than Kintaro, who's the supreme leader of the armies. You'd think being leader of the armies would be more important, but no, these extermination squads, this mysterious group of squads, that seems to be a bigger threat, at least in Trilogy. So, you could just bring stuff like that up again. So there's just a lot more to do with Kintaro being in Deception, and just a lot more you can establish in Deadly Alliance and Armageddon to tie into all this. So yeah, that's my rant about why Kintaro should have been in the GameCube port Deception. A very specific complaint, but still. In terms of other changes, just going to the base Deception now, straight away Scorpion's got to go. I could justify him Deadly Alliance, but Deception, he does fuck all. There's a section in Conquest, which is a filler section pretty much, where Shijinko team, helps him out with finding Quan Chi and stuff, which ties into the beginnings of Deadly Alliance, whatever. And then, you have an end cutscene where the Oni are hey, what's going on? But that doesn't need to involve Shinko, and that's just retreading information we had in Deadly Alliance, so that doesn't really do anything. Not that I mind it, but it's pointless. And then when you get to the main stuff, the Outer Gods save him and make him his champion, which sounds cool. It's something different for Scorpion, but he does fuck all. And in Armageddon, they just fuck over Scorpion for no reason. Classic Elder Gods moment, they just do nothing. So there's no reason for it. Again, Scorpion's just a loner in this timeline. And at least in Deadly Alliance, he's doing cool shit. This game, he does nothing. Literally nothing. And also, they established a champion of the Elder Gods. This monster character that was just an NPC. Just have him. Just make him another newcomer and in Scorpion's place. I know, you can't replace Scorpion. I just did. Like, like seriously, you can go a game without Scorpion, especially when 2 years ago you had him in the game, and you're going to get another game in 2 years' time, and you're going to get a spin-off game in under a year that has him as a playable character. You can go a game without fucking Scorpion just being there doing nothing. Like, to just have Monster there. And the problem is with Monster is people just say, oh, Scorpion clone. But in terms of story role, it would make much more sense if you just had Monster use the Outer Gods champion. Because the thing is, he shows up, he's like, I'm the champion of the Outer Gods. And he has Scorpion's moveset. But it's obviously not Scorpion. You can find really old threads online of people like arguing over whether Monster is a different character or just Scorpion. He's a different character. And that's what makes it so weird, how it's just a Scorpion clone with Scorpion's story role, but it's a different character. He is the Outer Gods champion. And then he just goes missing. He's never brought up again. We never learn anything about him other than him being the Outer Gods champion. And now Scorpion's the Outer Gods champion. Just have Monster debut. Because that's such an interesting thing. Because it's an interesting concept, but doesn't work with Scorpion. So yeah. Other changes, I honestly think Ross is pretty solid. They do a good job justifying all of them. Tanya is a bit of just a pointless thing, but at the same time, I think it's a very welcome return, especially to get an MK4 rep here. But a suggestion is just, again, bring Fujin back. Unless Fujin is killed by Deadly Alliance. Kai would probably be killed by Deadly Alliance too. Kind of sad, but, is what it is. So you could possibly replace her, but you don't need to, I don't feel. She's fine as is. And another character I'd bring back, and I guess could also replace Tanya. It's just another guy helping out her Dragon King, is Movado. Or at least just being a villain on his own agenda. I'm totally fine with that. You don't need to bring Suha back alongside him, although I'd be cool with that. But there's just not really a space for him here. But Movado specifically, because of his really strong debut, he beat up Kenshi, he beat up Jax, he beat up Sonya, he captured Kano after beating him up. He killed Cabal in his bio. Like this guy has such a strong debut. He showed up, fucked up everyone, succeeded in all his goals, even if they weren't crazy goals. It's not main villain shit. But dude was a credible threat. And then his ending, which is canon because he captures Kano, that's why he's not in this game. He's not on this roster because of that ending. The ending also has him given a new target, the Ling Kuei. So he sets out the Outworld. The news will not have reached him yet of Deadly Alliance actually being defeated. So yeah, he doesn't have to be in a Dragon King goon, because honestly, a lot of the characters don't work for the Dragon King. As in, his servants, they're kind of all contrived. The Undead General, that was a character concept. Again, that could also take Scorpion's place. That is just a free character slot. I could go to anyone that could offer anything of significance. Because Scorpion offers none. It is your free spot to go to anyone, honestly. So the Undead General, another possible idea. But yes, back to Movado, Instead of Hotaru just going after Kenshi and Satoru, that could just be Movado, which is a pretty cold subplot, in the sense that cold is in, it's just average. It's not really that important, but it works, It's something to do, and it's especially important to just continue the Red Dragon's presence, especially when they have another stage in this game, the Chamber of Artifacts, so like that. So there's absolutely a place to just have a Red Dragon here, and they knew that, because Darius, the last character to be developed for Deception, basically the character that they made once they decide they want to do Noob Smoke. At least that's my theory, because the E3 build, Noob and Smoke were still separate characters. And you can tell by the portraits of the unlockables. They're still there. But Darius was nowhere to be seen. And it's kind of a lasting effect, because when you make your Deception profile, you can see a Darius profile icon that you can make your profile picture. That is different to the one in game. So he was the last edition had been confirmed now, and I think it was after Noob and Smoke were put together into one slot, which I really appreciate. Like, that's very creative. They didn't have to do that, but they did it, and it gave us a new character and a really cool take on just a returning character, having the duo character. Although it's kind of unfortunate because I would be curious to see Smoke with his own bios. We got to see his ending, that was leaked a while ago, which is cool. But of course, main criticism of Smoke in this game is he's not a character because cybernetic, he's been reprogrammed, he's just a mindless goon. It's cool to see him back. New Smoke is a cool ass character, but Smoke himself is not the character. But yeah, then we got Darius, and an original concept for Darius was he was a Red Dragon member. Probably going to be another leader because in Day Alliance, my father established as one of the Red Dragon leaders. There were going to be more support, and I think each game is just going to bring more and more in, Of course, I'm getting kind of conflicts with that information because you have Dagon, but he's the Grandmaster. I think you have your regular, assemble of leaders, and then, above them on the hierarchy is just Dagon, the Grandmaster of the Red Dragon. So yeah, definitely a Red Dragon rep should have been here. Again, could have been a newcomer slot as well. But I think Movado himself makes the most sense, especially because he could do with some more bio lore. Also, with the new Black Dragon, he could have, of course, beef with Cabal as well. There's a lot of stuff you get involved in. Or, quite frankly, he could take Cabal's place. I think Cabal's a pretty interesting return, and quite important because it establishes a new Black Dragon. But a new Black Dragon, honestly, is pretty pointless. It's cool, and even though I don't like Cabal as a villain, and this is what started Cabal turning heel, I think they handle his return quite well. It's quite cool, actually. And of course, Cobra and Kira, the newcomers, I think they're very underrated newcomers. I think they have a lot to offer. Cobra's bios especially are really fantastic. So I don't want to erase their existence, but at the same time, you could have just had 3 Red Dragons in the roster, and honestly, it would have made more sense replacing the Black Dragon. So yeah, I don't know specifically where Movado would go in this roster. There's a lot, but there's a lot of options here. But I think he definitely should have been in the roster somewhere. Again, same for Cyrax. I don't you get there's a lot of places you can put the characters, but it's not like Daily Alliance where I have any specific ideas on where to replace them. Well, I have specific ideas, but I don't have a set plan. But other than that, I'm very content with the rest of characters here. And that includes the returning characters, just Porto from Day Alliance. Katana works because that was the absent Edenian character. Frost, again, I don't like the story, but I don't see an issue with it. That was the direction I'm going to take the character on anyway. So yeah, and Blaze, of course, ties into Armageddon. So he's absolutely welcome in this game. And Shao Kahn, again, I don't like the lore, but that's what they were going for with that exclusive. I don't want to completely change that. Because of course, the thing is with that is they're specific exclusives. And they want to be a big deal. They weren't just going to make their 2 exclusives hey, get exclusives and you get Johnny Cage and mocap. No, they're going to be big deals, obviously. So yeah, I'm happy to say those were the changes I'd make. I think it's a very balanced roster. Brings a lot of characters from Trilogy that we hadn't seen return yet. Except for Striker, Hataro, Shiva, and Rain. Striker and Rain, no one liked at this time. That was until Armageddon, where people came around on Rain, and Striker, people came around on MK9. More so, I don't want to generalize, but that's what, the general opinion change for fans. So that's why they're not that important to include. But yeah, that's going to do it for how I'd fix these rosters. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. I don't know when I'll continue this, but I will soon. So let me know what changes you'd make. I know there wasn't many, but there was some interesting stuff to talk about, and I'm sure there'll be much more to change when we get to the NRS rosters. And actually, I want to do an MK versus DC one. Not to change the DC ones, because I don't care about DC, but specifically MK reps, because I think they chose some bad ones. I don't think I care enough to do a video on that, but it's something I could do. So, again, I'll consider it. But for now, that's all from me. Thanks for watching. Bye.